What is up, everybody? Welcome to this Saturday evening edition of the CheezeTalk Podcast. I'm your host, Brian. Today I'm joined by Sproles the. What's going on? How you doing?
Hey, Brian. Things are good, man. Go Pack, go.
Go Paco is right. Um, so last time we talked, I don't even think the offseason started, right? With the Packers, kind of, you know. Um, what are your thoughts on let's kind of do like a recap of like the offseason, the draft, and then obviously Micah Parsons and like what like the first two games were against the Lions, the Commanders, and how we've been the last several games. Like what are your overall thoughts on how things are going for the Packers right now?
Well, I guess we'd go in and it was a real high having the NFL draft, right there at Lambeau. I wasn't in the crowd, but man, I was watching every moment of it. And when Mark Murphy came on for his basically his swan song there to announce the pick and announce that we got Matthew Golden, I'm like, this is cool. I mean, I know, Brian, I don't know how long you've been following the Packers, but I vaguely remember the Javon Walker pick back in 2002 or something like that. But it's been a long time, and so we're thinking, wow, we're really, we really got something here. And going into the year, I think you thought the offense was going to carry the team. Jacobs, and obviously we didn't have Christian Watson, but we had Golden, we had Jaden Reed, Tucker Kraft. We're thinking we're going to put up 40. And then, of course, right before the season starts, we go out and pick up Micah Parsons. And then you're thinking, oh, my God. I mean, again, I don't know if you remember this, but I remember when the Packers got Reggie White. And I kind of had a similar – because we didn't think we were going to get Reggie. We had no clue. We basically thinking, no way Reggie's going to go to Green Bay, right? That's the last place he's going to go. And with the Micah Parsons thing, I kept thinking Jerry Jones is not that stupid. He's not going to let a top guy at his prime go. And yeah, he was. So so here we are.
Yeah,
Fun
I mean,
times.
you mentioned like the Reggie White. When did he come over? Like in 90, what year was that? 90,
93.
93. So I was 11 years old. So I mean, I was still, didn't really understand the full aspect of what was going on with the Packers. But going to the next big free agent signing, my man Charles Woodson. So it's the same kind of impact,
Right.
Yeah, and like you, I expected, I didn't think Jerry Jones was going to do it, and then when I heard, was it 2 first rounds and Kenny Clark or a defensive player, I was thinking it was Rashawn Gary, you know, but losing Kenny Clark, you look back at it now and it's kind of. Do you think it's hurting us if we lost the guy up
I
the
lost the
middle?
video. Oh, no. Oh, no. Lost the audio. Oh, are you there? Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay, great. Okay.
So
Yes.
how much? I mean, yeah, thinking that Kenny Clark, and then you saw how Devontae Wyatt has been the last couple of years. So you thought that maybe Devontae's on the way up. Kenny Clark, he seems like he's been a Packer for the last 40 years, and he's been like unstoppable. He carried the G with pride, and it seems like up the middle is wide open for opposing offenses, and it's kind of frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. If we have a problem, and I don't know, we'll probably get deeper into this, but I think we have to think about how we're defending the run. I think that has had a significant impact on the defensive performance. Obviously, from a scoring standpoint, we're doing great. We're holding a bunch of teams under 20 points, right? I think 7 of the 10 games we've held them under 20 points. You can't ask for a whole lot more than that in the NFL.
Right.
But the offset to that is teams are grinding out yards and time of possession, and that's keeping our offense off the field, and that's giving us fewer possessions. And I think that's hurting us. So we got to figure some stuff out. We're not there yet. There's still a lot of football to be played. 10 games in, 7 to go, and then hopefully the playoffs. So I always believe that these coaches, the smart ones, they don't have everything put in installed on week one, and so it's going to be interesting this home stretch. What kind of stuff specifically Halfley pulls out to try to try to get the defense kicked up even another notch, because I think that other notch is possible.
Right, and the part that I've noticed on defense is obviously this is football 101. The quicker you get to the quarterback, the more your cornerback and your safeties look like they're all pro players. But when you can't get to the quarterback right away, they're getting not burned, but they're getting beat for 5 yards here,
Sure.
8 yards here. Fourth and 13, they get a first down conversion. Um, and it was really evident in the Lions game, our first game with Micah Parsons. There was that stat to where, like, when he wasn't in the game, like, the Packers weren't getting to the quarterback until 3.8 seconds after the ball was snapped, and when he was in the game, it was like 2.7 seconds. So it shows right there how huge it is to get to that quarterback and disrupt his rhythm. And when you sit there and you give the quarterback 4 or 5, 6 seconds to get rid of that ball, I mean, any quarterback, whether you're an all pro or just a rookie, I mean, you're going to find someone to get the ball to. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's just frustrating to know like what we have on the defensive line and what we have for linebackers, and we can't get to the quarterback. And you go against the Browns and you go against the Bengals, and was it against the Bengals where like back to back to back plays, or they have linemen getting carted off because they're hurt? I mean, and they make such a big emphasis like, oh, the Packers should be able to, like a revolving door on the offensive line. They should be able to get to that quarterback right away. And it's just like all the teams that were supposed to be getting to the quarterback on, we're not.
Right.
It's just frustrating.
And I think there's two parts to that. Number one is Parsons can't do it all by himself. He needs some help, right? And that other guy, who you might think is Gary, and Gary actually has a fair number of sacks this year, but it's kind of like if he doesn't sack the guy, he's not getting that quick pressure, right? And to your point, you're absolutely right. You need that quick pressure. You need to speed that quarterback up. Even if he gets the ball out, if he that's where you say that's when the defensive backs look like the superstars. So number one is that. Number two, I think, is a hidden thing. The enemy offenses second down, and when they run on first and second down, they're running effective.
Right.
Doable 3, 3rd, and 4. So that's where you don't the quarterback doesn't need a lot of time when he only has to throw a 5-yard pass for a first down. So I think on first and second down, stop the run so we get into third and long. And then in third and long, the quarterback's got to hold the ball for 3+ seconds, and that's when you guys can get there. So also, I think, we're not getting the pressure up the middle. I don't think that's a Kenny Clark thing, but, Wyatt got hurt in the Cowboy game, right? And I'm not sure Wyatt's 100% back. And then we weren't getting anything from any of the other guys. So, I was hoping Carl Brooks would have a big year this year, and he's been kind of quiet, So I think you need that pressure from the inside. One other thing I'll mention: last year I noticed, of course, we didn't have Micah Parsons, but last year I noticed that Halfley had a lot more, I'll call, designer blitzes and stunts and other games that they were playing. And this year, I think he's playing it pretty vanilla. Now, he does move Parsons around, right? So Parsons just doesn't line up over the right tackle. He's sometimes in the middle or whatever. But for the most part, you're not seeing the stunts and the games in the line. You're not seeing Cooper or Walker blitz. And I think, again, now, like I said, I'm hoping he's holding that stuff up his sleeve. And he's going to just, we get to Jared Goff on Turkey Day, and I hope he's going to throw out the throw the book at him, right?
Right.
Because Goff is a guy. You're right. Goff is a guy that if he can sit back there and pat the ball for 3-4 seconds, he's going to kill you. And the receivers are very good, but if you hit him, he'll throw you the ball. Then, by the way, then we have to catch it. That's the other thing.
Yeah. Also too, like you think about Rashawn Gary, he was more productive when Van Ness wasn't hurt. Now that Van Ness is hurt, you've seen Gary's production go down. So was Rashawn getting the breathers and Van Ness getting effective playing time, or I mean, you know what I mean? It's hopefully we can get him back on the field and get back to where we were in week one. That was nice to see.
Yeah, when did Van Ness go down? Was that the cow? I think it was the Cowboy
Yeah.
game, right?
Yep.
Ness, yeah, Van Ness is a guy that's got an interesting skill set. Much we're going to see him in the next week and 3 days, right? I mean, that's the problem. We got 2 games like back to back, Sunday and Thursday. So I don't know how much we're going to see, LVN play coming off that injury, but I hope he can do some things. So.
Yeah, I mean, 6'4", 275 pounds. You should definitely be effective out there, and it's about damn time that he's starting to make some plays. This is supposed to be his breakout year.
Right.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the? I guess we expected 40 plus points a game for the offense, and they're barely squeaking by getting 27. What are your thoughts on the offense? Obviously, there's been some injuries, but for the most part, it's been pretty sad watching the offensive line block for Jordan Love.
Yeah, and Jacobs, Jacobs has got once he's a terrific running back, and I think he's had a good year at doing what he can do. To your point, the line is not giving him any help, so he's getting hit at or right past the line of scrimmage, and he's having to do everything by himself. So yeah, that's a problem. And now without Jenkins, that's going to be a problem in the middle. I mean, you hope Sean Ryan can pick it up, but it's always an X man up, but I don't know. I think the other thing that hurt the offensive line continuity wise and all that was Zach Tom got hurt in the opener. It was a cheap shot by Aiden Hutchinson, and he had to kind of jump over Jordan Love, and he hurt his oblique. I don't think I even have obliques, so I don't know. Well, that's a tough injury for an offensive lineman, and he missed maybe a game or game and a half or whatever, and he's trying to come back. I don't know that he's been fully healthy. I don't know that he's been the same Zach Tom that that we've come to expect. So yeah, that's a problem. But I think so we hit the magic 40 number once, which is at Dallas. But you look at some of these other teams, and you think we should have been able to put a lot more points up against it. So, like I said, part of it is that we're not getting the opportunities because the other teams are, holding the ball so long on their own offensive drives. And the second thing is they're not giving up anything deep, so they're making the Packers play dink and dunk all the way down the field. And if you have to go 60 yards, 3 yards at a time, that's awful tough. So
yeah, and people are giving I mean, I go back to the Cowboys game, and people are giving Jordan Love a hard time, but he wasn't the one that gave up 40 points. He helped score 40 points. So that's what people seem to forget about. And even against the Browns, he did his job. He maybe had one bad pass for interception, but when it came down to it, they got the ball back, went down, drove down, and then blocked field goal.
Right.
It wasn't his. He got the team where he did what he needed to do. So I think considering he's been playing good so far. I think this year, a couple brain farts, but he's human too. So you got to give him that. But overall, I think he's doing good.
Yeah, I would say the one thing about Jordan that sometimes is frustrating is, I think he needs to learn when to we always said back in the day, you find the tuba section in the band and you throw the ball there, right? I know there's intentional grounding, but I think he needs to get better at knowing when a play is just not going to work and get rid of the ball and start over again. Too many times I've seen these really long bad sacks, and stuff like that. And so I think that's one area that he can improve in. But to your point, I think he's had a decent year. Obviously, we've seen all the drops, like last week, and it was horrible, and hitting guys right, between the numbers, hitting them right in the hands. You can't do any more than that. And what I like about him compared to some of our other guys is he always has that composure. And that's so important for a quarterback. He doesn't I think Rodgers sometimes would give his guys the evil eye if they, messed up. And Love just kind of takes it in stride and okay, we'll get you next time. And there were Dobbs dropped a couple early in the game last week, and then there's a critical play where he made a hell of a catch. So, I think you got to trust your guys and you got to keep going back to them. And that's what I like about Jordan. He seems to have a short memory. He seems to have a real level head on him, and doesn't throw his guys under the bus. So
yeah, you mentioned Rodgers. You can just imagine Rodgers. Just he doesn't care what player is. He's going to chew him out no matter what, whether it's on the field, the sideline, or in the locker room. He's gonna tell him what he thinks, and that's maybe that's what made him so good. Is he tried to hold people so high that people elevated to what he wanted, and what are your thoughts on?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say there's been some kind of shall I say shoddy play calling on offense. Some stuff that it's predictable. My kids are watching the game at one of the games, and I think it was a fourth down play, and it had trips to the left, and then you had your running back in motion to the trip side, and we got stopped for a loss. You run that play 7 times a game, and you don't have any variation in that play. The team is going to know it just as well as your team that's running the play. So why wouldn't you want to run something in the same formation but go backside? You know what I mean? Some of the stuff that to me, I guess as an amateur youth football coach, football watcher, a fan that's been watching football. What are your thoughts on some of the play calling for the Packers?
Yeah, that's a tough one because you don't know how much of it is the call or how much of it is the execution, right? So, give you a really good example. I thought you were going to bring up the Philadelphia game where every time Love went can, it was inside zone to Jacobs, right? And it was obvious, right? It was just obvious, every single time that's what happened. And sure enough, the Eagles, figured that out. And so on one of the critical plays, short yardage plays, can. Sure enough, they give it to Jacobs up the middle. He gets stuffed. And you saw on the tape, afterwards, you saw the Eagle guy saying it's inside zone this way, and he knew not only what the play was but where it was going, right? And the Eagles guys pointed it out. Well, it's interesting because I looked at that play a couple of different ways, and I looked at it from the end zone view, and it's so I don't know how much of this is drawn up or what, but the guy that called it on the Eagles got absolutely pancaked. And if Jacobs had run to the right, run to the left instead of the right, he'd still be running. Yeah. He'd still be running down Lombardi Avenue.
That's what I mean.
So I like I said, is that on LaFleur or is that on Jacobs? And that's a tough one. And like I said, Jacobs is a great back, and he admits he kind of got spooked when he heard them calling the play out. So I think you got a point. I think in some cases we are very predictable. I've worried that maybe there's some kind of tell, like somebody on the offensive line is leaning the wrong way, or they got something, and the defense knows what's going on. That's kind of what I've been worried about because you're right. It seems like they know what's coming. Yeah, I mean that's a good point. That could be play calling. It could be some kind of tell. I was hoping, when they have the bye, and that's the problem with the bye in week 5, right? Normally, if you have it like midseason, you can kind of go back and self scout, and the offensive coaches or the defensive coaches are looking at our offense and trying to see if they can figure out what we're going to do and all this kind of stuff. And sometimes you could pick up on that stuff. But with the bye happening, months ago, nah, I don't think they have time to do all that. They're too worried about, getting the plays in for this coming week. So yeah, that's tough. I didn't know if you were going to go to a deeper level on this whole play calling. And one of the concerns that I have, and I've had for years, is should the head coach be the play caller? So what are your thoughts about that?
Um, I mean, given his resume and like the coaching tree that he came from, and he he has, I think he has the capability of calling good plays. We've seen it in the past, but I've heard, I mean, a couple of places saying that him and Rodgers clashed, and we saw it on TV. We've heard about stuff, whatever. Was Rodgers like calling audibles in the huddle, changing the play in the huddle, just totally checking off that play? I mean, who made that play? You know what I'm trying to say? Did Rodgers, from his experience, make LaFleur look good? I have no idea. I have no idea. It's just, I don't know. It's I guess at policy, I believe in him. I think he's going to do the right thing no matter what. And you know, you look at LaFleur's play calling against the Cowboys a couple of years ago in the playoffs. I mean, that's
Right.
what I think of when I think of LaFleur, like being creative, getting the guys open. And again, it's a lot of these plays would probably work, but when you don't have more than 3 seconds to get rid of the ball, you gotta rush your decision, and you're gonna make mistakes.
Right.
You know, like I don't get, like, against the Cowboys, we had like fourth and short, and we punted, or we didn't go for it. And then, I mean, you have the Eagles doing the tush push. Why don't you? Why at the time? Why wouldn't you run Tucker Kraft in motion, have him going to the center, and do a quarterback sneak with Tucker Kraft? I just I never understood, like, if it's fourth and short and you go for it and you're in a shotgun formation. You're 6 yards away, 7 yards away from the first down marker. So you've got to advance the ball 7 yards to get a first down. I mean, beef up that line and just sneak it. If you don't want to have your quarterback in there, get a guy from the hands team, like a tight end, and just have him take the direct snap under center and have, a big beast behind you push you forward. I mean, I guess that's why I'm not in the coach in the NFL, but it's just, a lot of us are armchair quarterbacks, and these are some of the questions that we have, and
Yeah.
we could just be a fly in the wall in a headset, or you know.
So I guess my point is not that LaFleur can't call, because I think he can, and to your point, he has a resume of being able to do that, and highly successful. But I always think about the definition of a leader, and the definition of a leader is somebody that develops other leaders. The definition of a coach is somebody that makes his people better, not
Yep.
just his players, but his assistant coaches. So you see, when they talk about coaching trees, they normally come from some guy like Holmgren, for example, had a
Yep.
terrific coaching tree, right?
Oh yeah.
He developed all these guys.
Historical
And
tree.
yes, yes. And so what he was good at doing was taking a guy like Andy Reid, who nobody had heard of, and he was the tight ends coach when he came here. And then he was the quarterbacks coach. I'm not even sure if he was ever offensive coordinator for us. But then he went to the Eagles as their head coach, and he had success. And now, of course, he's with Kansas City, and look at what he's done. But so that's what I'm thinking. What's our coaching tree? We don't have a coaching tree.
Right.
So what Nathaniel Hackett, was the guy that got promoted from LaFleur's staff. Well, he didn't do well. Luke Getsy got promoted. Where is he? I think he's back. I
He's
think
back.
both those guys are back, actually.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So
But they're advisors. They're not like any, you know what I mean? It's
But that's my point, right? So if if you're a coach, if you're a Mike Holmgren, he very clearly saw his job as being able to develop the people underneath him to excel. And that's the problem I'm seeing. I don't care whether we're developing assistant coaches or head coaches for other teams, but my point is that if you have a guy like Stenovich that's been in the role now for a while, you got to trust him that he's going to know how to do this. And what that's going to enable LaFleur to do is be a head coach.
Yep.
Look at the whole team. Look at the whole game. And clearly I think we've had situations where he could maybe give some input to Hafley. He could give some input to special teams, right? Instead of, I think he just delegates. He just delegates. You can see he's on the sidelines. He's not even looking at the defense. He's looking at his play sheet.
Do you know how much more relaxed and under control he would be if he didn't have to worry about calling an offensive game plan?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? I mean, I could go both ways. Honestly, I believe in what Mark Murphy's done for the Packers as far as GM. I believe in what Goody's done. Ed Policy as the president. I think if he didn't agree with what was going on right now with LaFleur, I mean, not like right now, but like as in the fact of like past tense of like LaFleur calling the plays, I think he would have put a kibosh to that before the season even started. Yeah. So I think maybe he's going to see how they do this year and maybe make a change next year.
So that's a good point, though, because he, in essence, Policy came in kind of, even though it was before the season, and he's been with the Packers for 10 years or 15 years or whatever it's been, that, he didn't really have the reins until we were in training camp, right?
Right.
So it's a little late to make the move, right? You wouldn't hire your coach in July. You'd hire him in January, right? So I think this offseason will be the tell, right? This offseason will be, because basically he's got to extend him at some very large amount of money. I heard $50 million for 5 years or whatever, as being kind of numbers thrown around. That's a lot of money, So he's either got to extend him because he believes in him, or he's got to, move on. And so we'll see. But I guess, like I said, I think LaFleur's a brilliant play caller.
Yeah.
And I want him calling the plays. But the problem is, I want a head coach too. Because I think if we had a head coach, we would have the special teams problems that we've been having, right? I think too many times that he just delegates. And the same thing with defense. I'm not saying that Hafley's doing a bad job, but I think would Hafley be a better coach if he had some input from his head coach and if he had, knowing that, like I said, it's not just holding the opponent down and score. It's like, hey, we got to get some turnovers. We've got to get some, get the ball back, not let these teams have 10-minute drives. And that's what I'm saying. I think that's where I see that if you look, and I'm a little bit biased, but the two coaches in the NFL that had the longest tenures with their teams, because Andy Reid's got a long tenure, but of course he changed teams, are Tomlin and John Harbaugh. And both those guys are completely head coaches. I mean, they do not call the plays. And,
right.
You could argue, you look at their records and say, well, they're not really record-wise, they're not that much better than LaFleur, but neither of those guys has had, the Hall of Fame caliber quarterbacks that LaFleur has had either. So,
Yeah, I guess, I mean, to your point, to your question, I could go both ways. I mean, we, like, when we're like, let's say, pissed off at what's going on during the game, it's like, yeah, he shouldn't be calling the plays, but when things are going good, he's a good play caller. So it's like, I think that at the end of this year, I think next year is going to bring something different for the Packers. I think they're going to maybe reduce him to just the head coach. Because you think about it. So if he's an offensive play caller and the head coach, he's on offense. He's calling the plays. He's thinking of the next play. He's trying to scheme against the defense. And, what do you see? What do you see? Let's run this, run this. And then when the team's on defense, he's communicating with his offense. He's not paying, he's paying attention, but he's worried. He's thinking about his next drive on offense, what they're going to do versus what's going on in the game right now.
Exactly,
so I get what you're saying.
So by the way, the other interesting point is that if policy did move on from him, he would probably be number one on the hire list, right? I mean, if these other teams like the Giants or Tennessee or some of these other teams that have already fired their head coach, they'd scarf him up in a moment, right? I mean, I would if I was the Giants. I'd be like, yeah.
I don't think that he'll get rid of him. I really don't. I just think that he's got to be willing to reduce his role and just be the head coach.
Here's the fascinating piece, though, right? This is just fascinating. And for a guy like Ed Policy, I wouldn't, I mean, yeah, you and I would both love to be in his shoes, but we'd also hate to be in his shoes because talk about a big decision. So we get to the end of the year, however the end of the year rolls. If we hoist the Lombardi, I think there's a good chance that everybody's back. But I could certainly see teams dangling head coaching opportunities at Jeff Hafley. So if you're Ed Policy, do you keep LaFleur and lose Hafley? or do you say bye-bye, Matt and Jeff, you're our head coach now, right? Because that's the one thing that would keep Hafley at 1265 is if they said, no, you'll be our head coach. I'm sure he would jump at that, knowing that he's already built the system and the guys and I think he loves it here. I don't think he'd want to go to Tennessee or New York. I mean, you got to be crazy, right?
I've thought about that same situation. Like if we were to not retain LaFleur as a head coach, I'd almost want Hafley. I mean, you listened to his press conference a couple of weeks ago, sticking up for Matt LaFleur, and just from hearing that press conference, I was trying to find a brick wall around DePere to run through.
That's right. He's that kind of guy, right? And I think a lot of other people around the league. I'm not going to say he's number one. I don't know, right? Every owner, every GM is going to have their own ranking, but man, he's got to be in the top 3 to 5, and he will get interviewed for head coach if at the end of the year. So yeah, as I said, if you're Ed, what a hell of a decision to make because, like I said, my only concern with firing LaFleur is I don't know what I'm going to get. And it's quite possible that the next guy that takes over is not as good as he is. So you have to be careful. You really have to be careful. I'm reminded of the Bears when they fired Lovie Smith. And Lovie Smith at the time, I think, had gone 10-6. I mean, the Bears are they weren't like great, but I don't think they've been back to 10-6 since they fired Lovie Smith. And they had Mark Trestman, and they had I can't even remember all the names of the guys they had. That turned out to be horrible head coaches. So
Adam Gase.
And who's the other guy? Matt Nagy.
Matt Nagy.
They've had a litany of brutal head coaches since they fired Lovie Smith. Now, by the way, I'm not saying Lovie Smith is the next Bill Belichick or Vince Lombardi. He wasn't, and isn't. But like I said, you got to be careful what you have before you get rid of it, right? Because you might not end up, as good as what you had.
Right. I was going to ask you back in the play calling. I guess not in the play calling segment, but just okay. So this whole offseason training camp, McManus. What are your thoughts on how he handled his injury? How he didn't? We had the ball in our own 41 and we punted the ball against the Eagles. Yeah, maybe the wind conditions weren't the greatest, but it's worth a shot. Did they know McManus was hurt and that's why they punted the ball? And then we all get what we wanted to get Haverstick in, and then he almost lost us the game against the Giants. What are your thoughts on the kicking controversy? And maybe not controversy, but what are your thoughts on the kicking situation in Green Bay right now.
I'm as much of a homer as as anyone, and cut my wrists and I bleed green and gold. But that was malpractice. What they did with that. I mean, they should have sat McManus for a few more weeks. He wasn't. He even admitted. What did he say before the Giant game? He said, oh, "I'm finally starting to feel better," but he had already been active for a week or two, right? So I think it was malpractice. They had a guy on the roster on the 53. How many teams even carry two kickers on the 53, right?
Right.
You got to be crazy if you carry two kickers on the 53. But they had two kickers and they had the wrong guy. And I don't know what happened last week. I really don't. I don't know. Like you said, Haversick did not kick well, but I, that to me that might have been an outlier. I think he should have been kicking all along. But I'm not there in practice, and I don't see what they see. I just think that with the type of injury that McManus had, you got to sit him until he's 100%. You can't trot a guy out there at 70% and hope to win games in the NFL.
Right, and even against the Eagles, he was still hurt. So,
right.
And then like, oh, we're gonna have a kicking competition during the week, and then it's like McManus is like, oh, great. It's gonna come down to like, we wish you would have had our Haversick in there. And you're thinking on the 40-yard line, like I said, the winds are kind of bad, but you could have had a guy who has the team record for the longest field goal made out there trying to kick a field goal to help his team out, and it's just like, and even like, yeah, it's just frustrating. Like you said, it's malpractice. It's like it should be a felony in 50 states.
Right. Yeah. And by the way, I believe in McManus. I really do.
Same here. When he's healthy.
Yes, he's had a career track record of excellence, and we're lucky to have him. But it was malpractice to put an injured guy out there in a big game like that. And when you have a guy in the 53 that's proven the ability, like you said, to be able to connect. So, But like I said, I'm as much a homer as anybody, on your channel and whatever. But that one was a bad decision.
Well, you even had pregame videos coming from New York last weekend of, I think Matt Ramage had it out there of Lucas was making 60-yard field goals last week. It's like, son of a, it's like,
yeah.
But hopefully, hopefully they can get it figured out, and hopefully our injury report doesn't seem like a CVS receipt here pretty soon, because it's getting pretty frustrating to see all the injuries. And hopefully, speaking of injuries, hopefully we can get Marshawn Lloyd back on the field and get some good reps, behind Josh Jacobs. We're getting Christian Watson back. We're going to be getting Jaden Reed back. We're going to be Dobbs has been pretty steady for us all year. So and then you got three legit receivers out there. And then you're going to have Matthew Golden running around, Dontavian Wicks. So I think the second half of the season is going to be good for our receivers. We just got to get the offensive line to block for Jordan Love. It's been Achilles on our team as offensive line. Even not even just blocking, the discipline, the false starts, the holdings. It's just you get a good play and you're going back 15 yards. It's like, come on, we can't be doing this, guys.
Right.
Simple, easy plays.
I mean, and because you played and you coach, it all starts with the line. And for them, yes, we lost Elton, and that was a big loss. But you have to go into the year not saying we got 5 guys. You have to go into the year saying we got 8 guys that can all play. And I think what we've seen is that not all those guys can play. So that's been a problem. And that makes me I go back to coaching. Right? I go back to coaching. You can have the fanciest stuff, drawn up, but if you can't block the other team, it's not going to matter, right? So I think as a head coach, as an offensive coach, you got to start with the 5 guys up front and make sure that those guys are good, and then you got 3 guys behind them that can plug and play when they need to. You would hope that you wouldn't lose a guy like Zach Tom, in the opener like we did, but you got to be ready for that eventuality, because it's what do they say? Somebody said football is a contact sport. They said no. Ballroom dancing's a contact sport. Football's a collision sport, and
Yeah.
you're going to have guys hurt. So you got it's the NFL. You've got to prepare for that. Every team has guys hurt, and you have to be ready for that and have enough guys, enough bench, and the backups and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah.
Do you remember back? I mean, during like 2020, 2021, when it was COVID and we had musical linemen, and no matter where you put people, they all succeeded.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I always thought that Green Bay did a really good job, scouting and drafting offensive linemen.
Yep.
And now you see this happening. And to go to your point too about the penalties, you can have the franchise play, you can do this and do that. Like even like in youth football, it's obviously I was coaching 5th and 6th graders the last 2 years, so it's you get a really good play, and the play comes in, and you ask the ref, you're like, hey, who was it? And you find out the number of the kid, and the kid that committed the penalty was on the opposite side of the field, but of the play where the big play happened, and it's like they're trying to make up for whatever mistake they made, whether the guy got past them on the offensive line and they like went to like push him from behind, or it's just they got to realize that you got to let those people go because the play is already going 15, 20 yards down the field on the other side of the field. So, but being professionals, they should obviously know this, and you should know what a hold is and what a hold isn't. But the NFL refs don't even know what a false start is, so it's kind of what do you do?
I heard an interesting, and I wish I could. I wish I could credit this because I do believe in crediting, intellectual property. But a really fascinating article was written recently about this. We were talking about where they used to. If you go back to T.J. Lang and Josh Sitton, I can't even think of all the guys, but those are the two that really come to mind. They had this scouting philosophy of getting college left tackles and moving them, putting them at guard, putting them at center. Right? They wanted guys that could move. They weren't the biggest guys, but they could move, and their whole scheme was based around that, and it prioritized pass protection. If you have 5 left tackles on your offensive line, you're probably going to have a decent pass blocking, offensive line, right? And that's what with the strategy. Well, that strategy morphed recently, and you see that with the acquisition of Aaron Banks, who they paid a ton of money at guard. You see that with Belton, the tackle that they drafted, high, and these guys are 330 pounders. They're people movers. They're huge guys, right? But they're not necessarily that mobile, nimble guy. And so it's too early to see how this has too early to pass judgment on it and say good or bad, right? But it's very clearly is a change. And that goes all the way back to obviously Ted Thompson, right? Because he was the guy drafting all those other players, right? And he knew what to look for, and he picked guys in the 5th round and whatever, and that ended up being really good players. And none of those guys I mentioned was a high draft pick. They were all 4th or 5th rounders, and they all came in, and they all were all pro or borderline all pro guys.
Yeah, and you think of the Mark Tauschers, the Chad Cliftons, the David Bakhtiaris, the Mike Walls, and all those guys. I mean,
Bakhtiar was a 4th rounder, and like you said, Tauscher was a 7th rounder. So yeah, they came up with these guys, and they got guys that could play. And that's changed. It's obviously changed. Jordan Morgan was he was a left tackle, right? And that they're trying to get to play guard, and right now he may be the weak link on the line. I don't know, but there have been changes, and this reporter pointed out those changes, and they kind of linked it to schematically what they wanted to do with the run game. So, like I said, it's too early to tell. I mean, Josh Jacobs could be a 2,500 yard running back next year if they get this thing figured out and they get the right guys in the right spots. But, right now it's kind of looking like a work in progress. And to your point, that's been, I think, a big impediment to both the passing game and the running game. Anyway.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on the? We have 5 division games left to play. We played the Lions in week 1. With the Vikings, we play tomorrow. What are your thoughts on the rest of the schedule with the Vikings, Lions, and the Bears?
Buckle your seatbelts. I mean, because the division games are always the big games anyway, right? And last year, I don't want to even think about it. I mean, we were a Brooks fingernail from being winless in the division last year.
Yeah.
And you can't have that. The rest of the division has caught up. I mean, last year Chicago sucked. Sorry. Is this PG rated? I'm sorry. But anyway,
they sucked.
but they got, they got a new coach in there, and they're doing some things. I mean, it's really too early to tell for them too, because same as us, they haven't really played anybody. Minnesota, had a hell of a year last year. I mean, they came this close to winning the division, and then they decided to play quarterback roulette. So I don't, that's a big thing. And then obviously Detroit. Detroit was a powerhouse last year. This year they're they've lost a few, so it's kind of hard to tell. The season will be determined with these 5 games that that we have, because going head to head against both Vikings and I don't care what the Vikings record is. That game tomorrow is going to be a war. They're never an easy team to play, and Flores is kind of a mad scientist with that defense. And they've got enough playmakers on offense. I don't care who the quarterback is. They could put you out there, Brian, and Jefferson's going to be open, right? And
hand the ball off.
Yeah, right. And I mean, they've got some terrific playmakers. So people are like, "Oh, the quarterback stinks." Well, don't take that to the bank, because they got guys that can play. So I'm not saying they're better than us. We'll figure that out, right? But they're tough. I think the Lions are always tough on Thanksgiving at their place. That's going to be a tough game. Don't say we can't win it. Again, we beat them in the opener. I think again the key to that game is going to be, can we stop the run? Can we pressure Goff? If the answer to both of those things is yes, I think we win the game. And then, like I said, 2 with Chicago. The other concern, obviously, is that we have 2 non-conference games left, and that's only against Denver, who's 9-2, and in Denver, at Mile High, right? And the Ravens, who a month ago were kind of left for dead, and they're not looking dead anymore, right? So they got a tough team. They're going to be a tough out. So we've got 7 tough games, and that's what I said. I mean, I think our team can rise to the occasion. You mentioned, I don't know when he's going to come back, but you mentioned Jaden Reed. I think Christian Watson has been really, really impressive less than a year after hurting his knee. I don't know what's going to happen with Matthew Golden. I shortly after the draft, I was pumping the brakes, because I'm a closet digit head. And a few years ago, I looked at all of the Packer rookie wide receivers, like year 1 and 2 Packer receivers, Jordy, Greg Jennings, Devontae, Cobb, and all those guys, right? Year 1, their average statistics were around 30 to 35 catches for around 400 or 500 yards. and maybe a couple of touchdowns. And these were all guys drafted in round 2, right? Devontae, Cobb, Jennings, and Jordy were all second round draft picks. So they weren't like 7th round draft picks. But you look at that and you're like, that's where I kind of realized it takes a lot to go from college to the pros. Those guys all figured it out, and they all had terrific careers. But they didn't do it in year 1.
Right.
So Matthew Golden's the same kind of animal, right? I mean, I think the guy's going to be a superstar for us, but it's going to take him a couple years. And, so that's the thing. And I looked at him as saying, well, if he helps this year, great. But I really look at him and saying, because they can't keep everybody, and they got a couple of guys that next year are probably not going to be here. Now, they re-signed Watson, which is brilliant. That looks like a brilliant move right now.
Yep.
So they have him for this year and next year. Wicks they'll have for this year and next year. Jaden Reed they'll have for this year and next year. But Dobbs is a guy that, may not be around. So that's where you have Golden. We'll see what happens. The big loss, we haven't talked about it. We're 50 minutes in and we haven't talked about it. Big loss is Tucker Kraft. Tucker Kraft to me is a guy that at the beginning of the season, I looked at that and I said, well, outside of Jordan Love, maybe Jacobs, the one guy that I thought was indispensable on the team was Tucker Kraft, because there's no other guy on the roster that has his skill set. So he does 3 things incredibly well that I think magnify his value to the team. Number one, he's a hell of a blocker. And they just don't have that. I mean, the other guys are, they'll kind of get in the way and stuff like that. But they're not the same level of blockers he is. Number 2 is what he does after the catch. And he's a very dependable receiver in terms of catching the ball. But the other thing is he's incredible once he gets the ball in his hands.
Yep.
And the third thing is he's kind of that emotional trigger for that team. Because when he trucks that defensive back, the whole team gets fired up, and we don't have that kind of. Jacobs does that a little bit, right? Jacobs can truck a guy, but that's the kind of guy that you need, 10, 15, 20 yards downfield, absolutely trucking a defensive back, throwing him out of the club, we say,
Yeah.
and that's what Tucker would do, and that just would elevate the entire team, So we're missing, we're not on all 8 cylinders anymore, as a team. We're missing that cylinder, and it's a very important cylinder. So the other guys have to pick it up. Next guy up. That's the mantra the whole time. But it's not going to be easy. So
yeah, and go ahead.
I was just going to say the one thing that if you look forward to here in a couple weeks, maybe, because he's not going to play tomorrow, but if you look and you say, well, you have a Golden and you have a Watson and you have a Reed, that's a tough triple threat to defend.
And a Dobbs.
And Dobbs too, yeah. But you have a guy, Golden's. So I saw a little bit of training camp, right? And one of the things that impressed me from the get-go is he has something that no other receiver has, which is the ability. He's almost like a center fielder in baseball. His ability to track that ball.
Yep.
And that's a thing that some of the other guys really don't. But he has that ability, 30, 40, 50 yards down the field to adjust to a ball that's not perfect, And so I don't know. I mean, like I said, teams have been playing us really soft with that cover 2 shell. The guys, way deep. And so we haven't really seen a lot of that. But I think, in my mind, there's some opportunity there, right? And Watson, the 2 touchdowns he got last week, incredibly hard degree of difficulty on both those catches. He wasn't open on either one of those plays, and he came down with the ball. So, like I said, I've been very impressed with him, in his comeback. I think he's looked better, in the limited time we've seen him this year than he's looked, any time before that. So yeah, I think there's some opportunities, and I think we can get some things on track, like we've been talking about it. We got to get the offensive line fixed, and
Yeah, I mean, you picture, like you mentioned, those four receivers, if they're on the field, just imagine three of those four running straight hot routes, going straight down the field, and then you have Golden going doing like a slant underneath. Um, one thing I guess we didn't really talk about either was how, in my opinion, I thought that um, our backup quarterback Malik Willis was the firework for the game last week. Like we were down in the dumps, like, oh man, Love's out, he's gonna come back in, and Malik Willis came in, and in my thoughts, in my opinion, I think he ignited the whole team with the drive that he had. What are your thoughts?
You can go back to last year.
Yeah,
He's got an incredible skill set, and it's interesting to me because uh, I've never been in that position athletically or whatever. But you can imagine, here he is for how many games? 9 games, and he's not even getting off the bench. And in the 10th game, something happens, and in the middle of a drive, and he's got to come in and make a play. And I think it was like 2nd and 18 or something like that, right? They didn't give him an easy situation to be in, right? And he was able to get that first down, keep him on the drive, right? Like you said, we needed that drive. And he was able to do that. So you're right. I mean, he's got an incredible skill set, and I think I kind of half expected Goot to trade him at the deadline, not because we don't need him, because obviously we do need him, but because he's got value, you know. And unfortunately, he goes to another team. I guess we could get a comp pick, and maybe that's what he's looking for. But I don't think we're going to be able to re-sign him, and that hurts because you've seen. The way the league is. Look at all the starting quarterbacks that have gone down. And you need to have a backup that can, like in Willis's thing, he didn't have to play the whole game, right? He played what, half of a quarter or something like that. So he, a couple of drives, but or maybe it was only one drive. It might have only been one drive, but we needed that drive, and he delivered. So yeah, incredible guy. I can only imagine the skill set to be literally cold, sitting on the bench for an hour, and then have to come in that kind of situation and execute. And he did a great job.
yeah, he did awesome. That's I'm just excited. I'm excited for our receiving room to be at full strength. I really
Yeah,
am.
yeah.
I think it's going to make the defenses line up against us differently. Maybe it'll open up the field for Musgrave too. You know.
Well, and Reed is kind of unique in the sense that he does offer some of that yak potential. Um, so he's a guy that I think we have been missing. I actually had really good high hopes for uh, Dontavian for Wicks. I like him as a player. He's not seeing the ball much, so I don't know whether that's the play design. I don't know whether that he's not running the right routes the right way. I don't know whether that's Love's not looking for him. I don't know, but Wicks is a guy that I thought could have. I kind of almost thought he could develop into a mini Devontae with his skill set. He has a unique ability to that short area quickness in his release, and that was something that Devontae developed over time. He didn't have that coming in as a pro, but he developed that, and he's obviously we know how good Devontae Adams is, and I think I don't, Wicks, maybe that's a little bit of a stretch to say that he'd be as good as Devontae, but if he could give you 70% of Devontae, that would be a really nice thing. So, yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, we've got a lot of football left. It's going to be fun. And it's going to tell us about our team. I think we can absolutely go, I said, would we go 7-0 the balance of the year? Or that may be a little bit of a stretch. But as well as I do that the divisions and championships and whatnot are not won in September and October. They're won late in the year. So it's like, have we done enough to this point to develop our team, to learn our strengths, to figure out what we do well, to make adjustments along the way. Have we done enough? Because I think we've got the talent on the team, and it's just a matter of can we get hot at the right time. The 2010 team did,
Yeah.
right? They didn't get hot until December, and then all of a sudden they got hot. And so that's a good template, right? It's a good template to look at and say, yeah, I mean, a lot of people said we'd be undefeated going into the Philly game. Well, that wasn't true, but that doesn't really matter. What matters is, if we want to do some work this year, if we want to get where we really want to go, our goals, we're going to have to beat Detroit. We're going to have to beat Philadelphia. We're probably going to have to beat the Rams. We haven't played the Rams, so we don't know how we stack up against them. But I think we could beat Philly. We played a terrible game against them, and it was what was it, a 4-point game or something like that? I forget.
Yeah.
So I think we went toe to toe them. I think we can beat them. We proved we can beat Detroit. Now we got to beat them again here in real soon, 5 days. But I think we can beat them, and I'm confident, that we can do that. We got the talent, so we just have to go out and play the game. So
Yeah, and I think we'd be damn near undefeated if it wasn't for those blocked field goals, and maybe have one loss, to the Eagles possibly. But even then, if you wouldn't have the kicking fiasco, whatever.
Right.
But and you mentioned the 2010 season. I always look back to that, and it just proves that even though you might be having a subpar year, the ultimate goal is to get to the playoffs. And once the playoffs hit, anything can happen.
Yep.
We went into I remember that game in Philly. Tremont Williams had a pick in the back left corner of the end zone,
Yep.
and then it was even against the Bears where Sam Shields, an undrafted free agent, had a huge game for us.
Yep.
Against the Falcons, the pick six before halftime against Matt Ryan by Tremont Williams.
Yep.
I mean, you just got to give your team that extra boost of confidence, and if they can make it to the playoffs, then everyone's 0-0. And it's a whole new season.
Here's another little tidbit on that one. And everyone says the quarterback age 27 because that was Rodgers, and Love is turned 27 this year. But here's the other tidbit. We had a secret weapon on that 2010 team, a guy that had a skill set that nobody else could replicate, right? And he happened to play tight end. His name was Jermichael Finley.
Oh yeah.
And he got hurt in midseason, and he was out the year. I think it was a knee injury. So you look at that, you're like, hey, we had a tight end that, there are parallels, right, between 2010 and the 2025 team. And I think that's what you got to look at and say, the 2010 team had a ton of injuries. They lost a whole bunch of guys, but they figured it out, right? They won with the guys that they had. And so it goes back to, it doesn't, injuries are going to happen. You gotta have faith, and you got to work and keep getting better every week. And that's what that 2010 team did. So
you look at Charles Woodson. He went down at right before halftime, broken collarbone. And, he gave the speech at halftime and got everybody rallied up, and they came out and they ended up beating the Steelers. But you think back to those teams and just think of what could have been with Nick Collins or what could have been with Jermichael Finley, and it just sucks. But like you said, it's next man up, and they're in the pros and they have a job to do when they're called on.
We didn't replace Nick Collins until we got Xavier McKinney, right? I mean, that was 10 years of not having a safety like that, So you're right, and the same thing with Finley. I mean, we look at all those guys we drafted that turned out to be absolute stinkos until we got Kraft, and nobody thought Kraft was, he was the second tight end pick that year, right? We picked Musgrave in the second and Kraft in the third, and you're like, well, what's going on here, right? But yeah, but somebody figured it out and somebody knew, so yeah.
So
So
I'm sitting
yeah,
here. I got my live video thing on because you're going through Instagram, and I have like a little chat log that people are saying. So a guy on Instagram with a Parsons_posse, he wants me to bring up how our goal every year is to go to the Super Bowl, and everybody else's goal is to beat us, which is
yep, yep.
isn't that
That's the
something?
one. That's the thing that always gets me a yuck is that like these teams, like the Bears, they're happy if they win one game in the year and it happens to be against us, and yeah. So that's a good point. So Parsons posse, you're absolutely right. I would go back to that hidden story that I don't know that everyone knows, but maybe if you're really a Packer fan, you do. At the beginning of that 2010 season, the team came into the meeting room for the first time, and all of a sudden they, in the meeting room they had all the pictures of all the world champion teams, and right there in the front was a blank frame. And Greg Jennings goes to the coach like, "What the hell's going on here? You forgot to put a picture up. Who's supposed to go in there?" And McCarthy said, "I'm saving that one for you guys." And that's what happened. So, I don't know if LaFleur is quite as cognizant of that or whatever, but that's a great story. And I mean, I think you're right. We're only happy if we raise the Lombardi. It's Holmgren said this. It means something more to us because it's named after our coach. It belongs here, right? So yeah, yep, yep,
Yeah, there's no other team that has a 3-story, 90-foot Lombardi replica just hanging out in the atrium.
yep.
It's kind of cool. Do you ever think now that Mike McCarthy is residing back in Green Bay full time now? Do you ever think the Packers have kicked the tires on him at some sort of aspect with the team, some type of role?
I don't know. I mean, you like to think that there's a relationship. He's obviously come back. Was that last year? I think it was last year he came back, or was it this year? I can't remember. But one of the, I think it's great that he comes back in the building and whatever. But you don't know. I mean, I actually heard his name mentioned as a possibility for the Giants job. So I think a lot of that depends on him, right? It's like, what does he want? If he's holding out for another head coaching spot, not going to be here. But yeah, if he could come in as a special advisor or something like that, yeah, I think that'd be terrific.
Yeah.
So I love, I love that they've always had a connection to history. I just mentioned this, I think today on X or yesterday. Um, it's the whole concept of Lombardi Standard Time, and so for those of you that weren't around in the '60s, and I wasn't around in the '60s either, but I read the books. But Lombardi Standard Time was 15 minutes ahead of the real time, right? So if the bus is supposed to leave at 6 p.m., if you got on the bus at 10 to 6, you were late. Everybody else was on the bus at quarter to 6 because they're 15 minutes ahead of time. So to this day, you're driving down Lombardi Avenue, you look up, and there's a clock on the facade of Lambeau Field. It's 15 minutes before the time that's on your watch, right? So I've always loved the fact that we have this sense of history, right? And this is something that's unique to us. And here, you don't see this in Philly. You don't see this in Minnesota. You don't see this
Yeah.
Detroit. I mean, uh, this is here. I mean, we have a sense of history. We have a sense of excellence, and I've always thought that that's a neat part about being here and being a Packer fan.
Yeah, and I always tell people, even if you're not a Packer fan, if you're ever in Green Bay,
Yeah.
hop on the chance to go to Lambeau Field, take a stadium tour, go to the Hall of Fame, go to the Pro Shop. If you go to the Hall of Fame, you'll definitely have maybe a greater respect for the history that has gone through Green Bay.
Right. Well,
And
it's the history of the league, not just the
yeah,
history of the team. And that's
yeah,
what I think is awesome is that you go back and you see how football was played back in the 30s and 40s and 60s and 70s and all that. And that's something that they just, like I said, it doesn't exist anywhere else. It doesn't exist in Jacksonville or Tennessee or it's laughable, right? But this is kind of the maybe they should have had the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Green Bay instead of in Canton. I mean, what the hell happened in Canton? But but anyway, I think you're right. If you haven't been to the hall, I was, when you asked me for photos, I was going to send you two photos I had that taken approximately probably 15 years apart of my daughter lined up next to the Hall of Fame, Packer Hall of Fame. They've got a little I don't know what you call it, diorama or whatever, life size figure about the Ice Bowl game, the end of the Ice Bowl game.
yep.
And they have the Packer offensive line lined up on the 1 yard line, Dallas defensive line, lined up, and whatever. And so I had two pictures. One when she's 5 years old and she's wearing a little Packer jersey and she's got this mean look on her face down in a 3-point stance, And then another one, like probably 15 years later, when she was probably about 20. I think she was in late high school or maybe in a college or something like that. And same picture, same stance, and I was going to send that to you, but that's what you see, when you go there, you see what the sport, how the sport has evolved. You see how the game was played. You see some of the personalities and all that. And I just think it's, you're right. I mean, it's a tremendous heritage that we have here in Green Bay.
Final question: what do we see tomorrow against the Vikings? What are you hoping to see, and who's going to have the breakout game, or who's going to have the who's going to headline tomorrow's game when it's all said and done?
Well, offensively, I think we run the ball, which people don't want to say, but the way that Flores plays. Now, by the way, I'm assuming Flores plays, and that's a big assumption because he's wacko. He does all kind of different stuff that he'll have stuff that we probably haven't seen. But that classic thing of mugging those two linebackers up in the A gap, so one of those linebackers is Eric Wilson, who used to be with us, right? And but we got guys on the offensive line that outweigh him by 100 pounds. So I don't know if you're lining that guy up there. I like, yeah, let's try to drive the ball down their throat. Now we know that Jacobs is probably not going to play, right? So it could be a huge game for Wilson. The other guy that I think may have a really significant game is Chris Brooks, not for the running, but for the pass blocking. And again, Flores loves to blitz. He's one of the highest blitz guys, out there. And Brooks is like another guard. You saw a couple of the plays against the Giants where he completely stoned those blitzing linebackers. So I think those are guys that are going to play a role. I think we have to establish that we can move the ball downfield on them. I don't think their defensive backs are the best, so I think we have some opportunities there. But we have to block. We have to block their pass rush, And then defensively, I think it's all about confusing that quarterback. It's a rookie guy. Yes, he's a second year, but he's only started handful of games. And their weapon, we can't let him sit back there and take 10 seconds to read, the defense. I think we've got to do some of our own blitzing. We've got to send some unique pressures that he's not anticipating. I think we have to confuse him, get him off his spot. If he does, I think he'll throw us the ball. And the team that gets the turnovers is going to win this game. So, yep, that's what I'm calling for.
We also got to make sure that we remember that McCarthy is mobile and he can run.
Yeah.
So just don't give up on that and kind of try to stuff the middle and have a spy on him at all times, I think. And like you said, some exotic blitz packages would be nice. Move Parsons up and down the line, get Cooper going after the quarterback, get Quay Walker going after the quarterback, and get him.
I was gonna say, McCarthy can run, but he's not outrunning Cooper. I like our odds when we got Cooper on him, right? So yeah, that was one of the thoughts I had. Is I think you got to weaponize that guy, And if you have him and Micah, and you have Gary, and hopefully Van Ness can play a little bit, potentially we could really throw some stuff at them that they're going to have trouble dealing with.
What I love about Edgerrin Cooper is during the bye week, they had, I think it was on Parsons, was it Instagram post or whatever social media, where he was hanging out with Edgerrin Cooper at his horse ranch, like 20 minutes from me. It's
I didn't know that. Really?
It's like I'm pretty sure. Well, I'm pretty sure he lives in Luxembourg, which is just outside of Green Bay. So, that's one cool thing about being. I always like to say I live 6.6 miles from Lambeau Field. But it's just cool to always see the team out and about at different, whether it be shopping or just driving, and this time of the year is when all the Packer plate, the personalized Packer plates are with the big old Tahoes or the Suburbans, and you know who they are, and you're yielding the Gudikins in the roundabout from the left because you see them coming through, or it's just. I remember when Nick Barnett was a Packer, and they had the charity softball game at the Fox City Stadium, and he had that big F-350. It was like and he had that big old like bullhorn on it that he would, just whatever. And towards the end of his career in Green Bay, you'd see him driving around, and he had like an awesome carbon fiber paint job on it or whatever. It's just cool to see that stuff. It's not stuff that everyone gets to experience, and I just think it's kind of cool to be in the situation or be whatever, to be, shall I say, in the shadows of Lambeau Field. I think it's, it's awesome. If I'm ever having a bad day, just go there and just park and just whatever, or go pro shop, go and just walk around the atrium. It's open 364 days a year, and just go and just forget about everything for a half hour or so, and just
what a great experience for the kids, because like you're right. I mean, the players will be around in the community. Years ago, when Donald Driver was a big player, he was at some event down here in Appleton, and my daughter got her little visor signed, and she was just on cloud nine, to meet a Packer player. So it's great. It's great for the kids. And
well, so a little story here. So, the Flores kids go to the same school district as my kids.
Oh, okay.
So when I was coaching, was it third grade basketball or fourth grade basketball for my son, and I had his kid on my team, right?
Really?
So we'd be sitting there in games, and all of a sudden you hear, you get like the outside buzz. You hear all the people watching the kids play, talking, and all of a sudden it gets quiet, and you hear and you look, and coach walks in, right? And then after games, you have the opposing team that you play against was all taking team pictures with Coach LaFleur. It was just cool. It's just cool that he's out and about, and he's talking and whatnot. So yeah, no, it's kind of cool, to guess be in a situation. So I'm hoping the Packers. My thoughts for tomorrow. I think we're going to get to the quarterback. We're gonna fluster him. We're gonna make him turn the ball over. And I think our ground game needs to get going really good, and that can open up our receiving game. And I think it's going to be I think we're going to get past that 27-point range. I really hope we do. I'm thinking maybe 30. Barring a not blocked field goal.
Right.
So yeah. Well, listen, I want to thank you for taking almost an hour and a half out of your Saturday evening to discuss Packers. It's always a blast talking with you, because your knowledge and your perspective is awesome, and it makes me think about different situations too with the Packers and how I think about certain things. And how is your other podcast going with It's the Group? How's that going for you?
It's a little blurred, so you can't see it, but this is our logo. Yeah, we're doing good. We have an episode that dropped just yesterday that we're really, really proud of. And this predates your time, but maybe your mom and dad used to listen to music by Bobby Caldwell. And Bobby Caldwell did a song called "What You Won't Do for Love." It was a huge #1 hit. But Bobby passed a couple years ago. He was in his 70s at the time, and we interviewed Bobby's wife and daughter. And oh my God, the stories they have to tell. It was really, really cool. So in the last, year, we've had some really good guests on our program. We have a guy that played drums for the rock band Chicago for almost 30 years. He came on. He had terrific stories to tell, great songs, and we had another guy that fronts a band that's current and playing currently released. In fact, we released our episode on the day they released their latest album, so that was pretty cool. So yeah, we've been getting some pretty good uptake and interest in our program. We're always looking for more. We've got our first half of next year planned out, so we're really excited about some of the content we're going to bring. If you like music of the 70s and 80s and 90s, popular music. We don't do country, sorry, but but we do a lot of popular R&B, rock, that kind of stuff. And if you like that, tune in. You can find us at itsthegroove.com. That's our website. We're on all the social media, Instagram and Twitter, and we have the YouTube channel too, which is at It's the Groove Podcast. So we've got probably about something like we're on officially episode 48 right now. But
Awesome.
we actually have more content on our YouTube channel because we have some playlists and things like that. And one last thing I'll mention is that the when we publish every other Friday, so we've been very consistent on that. And so 2 weeks from tomorrow or 2 weeks from yesterday, look for our next episode. It's on the guy that played drums for the band Toto.
Africa.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
And Rosanna, yeah.
Yep.
So unfortunately, he passed as well. But we have an expert guy from the UK who is very familiar with his work, and so he's going to be joining us. And so we're really excited about that. So yeah, if you like Toto and Chicago and Earth, Wind and Fire and all that kind of stuff, we've got music for you. So
That's
thanks for
awesome.
asking. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I can remember back when I had you on, you were just starting,
We were just
your
starting.
podcast. So
We were
that's
just
awesome to
starting.
see how you're growing and everything.
Yep.
I have a couple of music stories from when I was a bouncer just down the road from Camp Randall in my younger years. I worked at a place called it was the Regent Street Retreat. It was on
Okay.
Regent Street in Madison. It was a
Okay.
bar, and and the other half of it was called the Annex, and they always had
Okay.
live acts that came there.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I remember partying after bar and after party with 30 Seconds to Mars. That's when they first came out
Oh
with the whole
wow.
band. I remember partying with was it Buckethead?
Oh wow.
You ever
Oh,
hear of
okay.
Buckethead?
Yes.
They're
Yeah.
the,
Mm-hmm.
the guitarist used to be in Guns N' Roses, I think, and
Right.
he'd wear a KFC chicken bucket on his head like a mask, and he'd have the eyes cut out. Then he had the orange funeral sticker across the top of
Oh
the
boy.
bucket.
Oh good.
Daughtry, when he first came out, I was stage security for Daughtry. So yeah,
Okay.
it's cool how you can always tie stories into other people's stories, and
Right.
just it puts you back to like a certain time in your life when it was this cool meeting Daughtry, meeting 30 Seconds to Mars, and
Sure.
all that fun stuff. So it's
And those things make an impression on you, right? So you'll remember that 50 years from now. You'll be thinking about that. You'll know where you were, what you were doing. You'll remember the music and all that. So you're right. I mean, music has a unique ability in our lives to be able to do that. Our charter, what we try to focus on, is what we call the hidden connections, which is like you might know the music, and I would say you know, 90% of our programs, people are going to recognize the music. They're normally songs that are on the charts and stuff like that, but they might not understand all the hidden connections, like who wrote the song, who produced it, the musicians that were on there, and all that kind of stuff. So that's where we try to. That's kind of our space. Is helping to tell a story, helping to, you know, bring people back with that music to where they were, but also give them a little insight as to why that might have been important and who else
Yeah.
was involved. And yeah,
I've
so.
also like noticed with myself, like I tied music, certain songs to certain times in my life. And I used to be, for the longest time, if I heard something that it was a good song, but it brought back memories of like something negative in my life, now I'm to the point where I listen to it. It's because I have to get past that point to let it bring me down. And you just gotta,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, you can find. Okay, sorry. You can. As far as like my socials, I'm on Instagram, TikTok,
Mm-hmm.
Facebook, YouTube, X.
You're
You
all over
can.
the place.
Yeah. So pretty much, if you go to any of those profiles, any of those social media platforms for me, if you look at my profile, my bio or whatever, I have my link tree link. Click on the link tree. I think I'm at 51. I had a Facebook group or Facebook page for my podcast, and then I deleted it, but then I'm back up and going again on Facebook. I have like 51 followers, so yeah, I don't know. But yeah, if you go to my link tree, click on that, look at all my socials, follow the Sproles on Twitter. I repost and I like his content on the It's the Groove podcast. I think it's cool what he's doing. But yeah, I want to thank you for being on again, and hopefully later on in the season I can have you back on. And
Let playoffs, baby. Let's go playoffs.
you know what I want to do is I want to do like a live broadcast, like not like a play by play, but just like have like one or two people on as like we're watching the game.
That could
The
be
only thing
fun.
that sucks,
Yeah.
only thing that sucks about that is I don't know like what the delays would be between like what I'm seeing versus what you're seeing, and I don't know how that would work, but I don't know. It's always a thought, but I definitely want to have you back on this season before hopefully we're in the playoffs, and kind of get your thoughts on how the season played out and what you see going forward with the Packers.
Well, and next time I talk to you, I'm going to have a scouting report for you on a new cheese venue. I haven't been there yet, so I can't tell you about it. But that's what I know. That's our other connection is the whole cheese thing. And so I just got about a week ago, I got a referral to a place in Oshkosh that does a really cool thing with cheese, and I want to try it. So I'll let you know the next time.
My best cheese venture is going. I always like to time things so you guys get an idea how close stuff is to me. Is Stray Cheese, which is like 45-second drive from my house. They make the best. They make the best cheese curds. There's been days where I go to pick up my daughter from school where I accidentally drive by the school and keep on going to Scray's, and next thing you know, I got cheese curds in my passenger seat. I don't know how they got there, but you know, but no, they got the best cheese around. I'm always a sucker for some good cheese.
Yep.
There's not a day that goes by where I'm not eating some type of cheese. So
I was going to say, open up my fridge and you probably won't find a whole lot, but you will find a lot of cheese.
absolutely. Well, listen, I'll let you get
Okay,
on with the
Brian.
rest of your night, and thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy. Have a good evening.
You as well. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.